due for replacement in the near future, still equipped some 11 light bomber squadrons and bore the brunt of circus operations until early 1942. Even when escorted by fighters, its slow speed and poor armament resulted in high losses to German fighters and flak. In early 1941, the new Me-109F began to enter Luftwaffe service. Due to the appearance of the superior cannon-armed Spitfire 5B in February, delivery priority given to units serving on the German coast,
MG-Munition wird gegurtet.
and JG-26
Das Leitwerk reicht für die Siegesliste bald nicht mehr aus. Einbau der Filmkamera.
Units had received the even better 109F4 with the 601E engine.
Das ist Petz, der Staffelbär.
Advantage over the Spitfire. Most fighter units had their mascots. Time between sorties, pilots of JG-26 enjoyed themselves with the Schwabe Bear
Hier die
and
Staffelhunde.
Hounds. As JG-2 spread around a number of airfields in the Pas de Calais, three Gruppen of JG-26 distributed from Clermont through to the Belgian border near Abbeville, warning time of an incoming enemy raid was very short. On some occasions, Bob Galland, as Commodore of JG-26, ordered the whole Geschwader scrambled, whilst on other times just one group would be dispatched to deal with the incoming enemy. It was the size of the raid that determined the response. A high level of readiness was expected at all times. Gun camera film taken from 109Fs after this raid shows a number of Spitfire 5s being shot down. Other pilots who had not been scrambled and ground crew watched as Hurricanes carrying bombs under wing roar low over buildings on the edge of the airfield.
Schon ist der Motor getroffen. Die Zeitlupenaufnahmen zeigen, die Bewegungen bedeutend langsamer als sie in Wirklichkeit sind.
MG-17s mounted on the nose cowl,
Auch dieser Brite ist angeschlagen.
MG-151 cannon firing through propeller boss. As all weapons were mounted along the aircraft's centre line, it made the 109 highly effective in air-to-air combat. Galland thought this a backward step and had a number of his own 109s customised to carry heavier armor.
Feuerstoß auf Feuerstoß schlägt in die britischen Jäger.
Was fitted in each wing. He had the cowl machine guns replaced with the more powerful 13mm MG-131.
Sekunden später wurde auch dieser vernichtend getroffen. Auf englische Maschinen, die über den Kanal zu entkommen versuchen.
What appears to be a rogue edit that has crept into this report, gun camera footage 109 shows it shooting down an RAF Lysander Army Cooperation aircraft over the channel. It seems likely that it was caught flying near the coast of England by the 109 on a day route over the channel. However, it's quite possible that it was serving with flight number 419, whose task was to fly agents to France.
Abgeschossener Engländer.
British losses in 1941 on circus ops amounted to 849 fighters. These are matched against the Jager claims for 950.
Rückkehr von siegreichem Luftkampf.
These ops cost the RAF further 900 losses. One the Luftwaffe fighter losses amounted to 193 machines.
Oberst Galland.
Four times as many were lost.
Unsere Jäger an der Kanalküste sind Tag und Nacht auf der Wache. Abschied von
On the
Generaloberst
22nd of November 1941, Gallen found himself as one of the Knight's Cross holders chosen to be pallbearers at the
der
state
sich den
funeral
Aufbau der
of
deutschen
Ernst
Luftwaffe
The
unvergängliche
announcement
Verdienste
that the
erworben
famous
hat.
First War ace had died in a
Der
flying
Führer
accident
betritt den
disguised
Ehrensaal
his
des
suicide.
Reichsluftfahrtministeriums.
Brought into the Luftwaffe by Goering, who believed his reputation would
Der
reflect
Führer
on the
drückt der Mutter
fledgling
sein
German Air
Beileid
Force,
aus.
Udet found himself appointed admin roles as Chief of the Technical Office of the Air Ministry, and later as Chief Air Inspector General, for which he was neither temperamentally nor
Der
intellectually
Reichsmarschall
suited.
spricht zum letzten Male zu
Blamed
seinem
by
alten
Goering and Hitler for
Kampfgefährten.
the failure of the
In seiner
Luftwaffe
Rede
in
nennt
the
ihn
Battle of
seinen
Britain,
besten
held
Kameraden,
responsible
der durch
for
seine
the low
Taten
production of
unsterblich
aircraft
geworden
to
sei.
service the demands
Er werde
of the
immer zu den
Luftwaffe
größten
in
Helden
Germany's
Deutschlands
ever-widening
zählen.
war.
In seinem
plunged
Lebenswerk
into
hinterlasse er
depression.
uns ein Erbe,
He
das die
decided that
Zukunft
honour left
mitgestalten
him
werde.
no alternative but to take his
Der
own
letzte
life,
Gruß des
which he
Führers.
did in the early hours of the 17th of November by shooting himself in the head. He was nevertheless given a state funeral with all the pomp and ceremony the Nazi state reserved for these occasions.
Der Führer erscheint, begleitet vom Reichsmarschall zum feierlichen Staatstrakt.
Just 6 days after the interment of Udet, Gallen found himself once more a pallbearer in yet another state funeral.
Die
On this
Auszeichnungen von
occasion, the
Werner
event
Mölders,
was rendered
der
more
mit
poignant
115
as it
Luftsiegen der
was for his
erfolgreichste
close friend
Jagdflieger
and
der Welt
rival
war.
in the air, Werner Mulders. As
Der letzte
Inspector
Gruß
of
des
Fighters,
Führers.
Mulders had indicated his desire to attend Udet's funeral and had intended to be one of the pallbearers. At the time, he was on an inspection visit in Russia and had made arrangements to fly to Berlin in a Heinkel 111 transport. On the flight back to the capital, the plane crashed, killing all on board. By the time of his death, Mulders' face and career was well known through the coverage given to him by Goebbels' propaganda department. The state funeral he was given was deemed fitting for the highest ranking, most decorated Luftwaffe officer yet to die in the war. While Hitler was present to pay his respects as head of state, it was Goering who had delivered the funeral eulogy.
Die Überführung zum Invalidenfriedhof.
Among those in the funeral cortege were high-ranking Luftwaffe officers such as Field Marshal Milch and the commanders of the various Luftwaffe air fleets, including Kesselring, Stumpf, Lorzer and others. To their rear followed many of the commanders of the Jagdgeschwaden who'd come to pay their last respects to the former inspector of the Jagdflieger. Goering followed immediately behind the gun carriage bearing the coffin of the flyer as it wound its way through the streets of Berlin to the famous Invaliden War Cemetery, in which many of the famous figures from Prussian and German history were buried. The coffin was carried past the tomb of Manfred von
Am Grabe
Richthofen,
Manfred von Richthofen
Germany's
vorüber
highest-scoring
wird Werner
ace of
Mölders
the
zu
Great
seiner
War,
letzten Ruhestätte
whose record
getragen,
of 80
die
kills
sich
had
neben
been
der
passed
Gruft
by
Ernst
Mulders
Udet
just
liegt.
6 months before. Goering stood for a moment and raised his Reichsmarshal's baton in salute as he passed the tomb of Udet. As Mulders' coffin was lowered into the ground, Gallen, fleetingly seen here, was standing with the honour guard at the side of the grave with his sword. He noticed that Goering was indicating for him to step forward. He later related his shock at the Reich Marshal's appalling bad sense of timing, as there and then Goering told him that he would follow in his dead friend's footsteps as the next Inspector General of the Jagdflieger. Barely a fortnight later, Operation Typhoon, the offensive launched to capture Moscow before the onset of winter, failed on the very outskirts of the city. Amid plunging temperatures, the exhausted German forces were then assailed by a carefully planned Soviet counter-offensive.